Waterboys movie review. So this is a review of the 2001 Japanese movie Waterboys. Not to be confused with the Adam Sandler movie Waterboy, which came out in the 1990s. Actually, I think there's another, like a Swedish movie also called Waterboys or something. So yeah, this is the Japanese 2001 movie. I arrived actually in Japan in 2001. That was the year I first arrived in Japan. The movie was kind of at the height of its popularity at the time. So this was like a really popular movie for the Japan in that year. I think it got like some sort of international recognition as well. I was reading in Wikipedia that it got nominated for some award or something. But it was also really popular within Japan. Now, yeah, actually, sorry, let me back up. I'm doing this as part of my scripted movie review series where I revisit old reviews that I've written in the past. I want to make that disclaimer because there's a real possibility I was too harsh on this movie. This could have been kind of a result of culture shock. Kind of that period where after you arrive in a new country, after the initial feeling of excitement and euphoria wears off, you start kind of feeling like they're doing everything wrong, or everything here is backwards, or it's all stupid. I may have been influenced by that because I developed kind of a really negative reaction to Japanese comedy. I thought it was just kind of stupid and over the top and I don't know, dumb. And Waterboys was just kind of the Japanese comedy right when I was going through that. You just kind of saw posters for it everywhere and it was on TV all the time. A few years later, I was getting together with some co-workers, other English speakers, and other Americans and Australians and New Zealanders. And one of the guys from New Zealand was a big fan of Japanese movies. So he wanted to rent Waterboys, and we all watched it together. And I tried not to complain too much, but the whole time I was watching it, I was just thinking to myself, oh, this is stupid, this stupid movie. Hopefully that coworker isn't watching this right now. But yeah, if he is or whatever, I'm just going to make the general disclaimer that I may have been too harsh on this movie because sometimes when you're in a country, you have some sort of culture shock where you develop negative attitudes. Okay, that's my disclaimer. All that is kind of aside. Now I'm going to kind of lay into the movie and kind of go back to my original negative assessment on it. So the plot of this movie apparently is based on a true story, or very loosely based, is there's a bunch of boys who decide to form a synchronized swimming team at their high school. That's the joke. They're boys, but they're doing synchronized swimming. Yeah, that's the whole joke. That's a joke that you're supposed to be laughing at for the whole, 2 hours or whatever the runtime of this movie was. They just kind of bang on it over and over again. So they're shown in various stages of ridiculousness and desperation throughout the whole movie. But it's pretty much just a one-note gag that gets stretched out over a 2-hour period. Now, to be fair, this is Japan, and in Japan, there's been a trend of movies, comedies, where people who kind of are putting themselves out there to do unusual things, or to do something that might make them stand out a bit or be socially awkward, takes on a little bit of more of a cultural significance. Some people say this started with the Japanese movie Shall We Dance, which was remade at one point into an American movie. And I remember reading a review of the American remake which said, in Japan, this was like a big deal because in Japan, you don't want to stand out. Everyone wants to kind of blend in. So the idea that people would be voluntarily doing something socially awkward, like learning ballroom dancing, had a whole different cultural significance in Japan, and that's why the American remake of this movie never worked. So, yeah, this could be kind of going along with that general trend, and maybe that's why this movie kind of maybe worked better in Japan. But I think since this trend has begun, Japanese studios have been cranking these movies out. Over my years in Japan, there were several movies with a similar plot, where there was like a group of misfits who did something to make them stand out a little bit. I mean, really, even Hollywood kind of turns out these movies as well, about a lovable group of misfits. Lovable group of misfits who join together in a team with an eccentric, half-crazy coach, and they succeed against all odds. This is pretty much the plot of Waterboy. It's the plot of a lot of Hollywood movies as well. In fact, you remember that old Karate Kid movie? Where there was that thing where they thought that the coach was a slave driver and he was just using you for free labor. And then when you finally complain about it, you find that he's actually been teaching you valuable skills the whole time, even though it seemed like he was just using you for free labor. Yeah, that's in this movie as well. I don't know if it was an intentional ripoff or if it was just... But yeah, that's in the Water Boys as well. There's also this very long and convoluted plot to explain why these boys would be on a synchronized swim team to begin with. They don't just decide to join the synchronized swim team. There's a long train of events that kind of get them there. Right. So there's an all-boys school, and at this all-boys school they have a swim team, but there's only one member. And then all of a sudden they get a new teacher who's a pretty young woman. She joins the school faculty. All the boys are infatuated with her. And she announces that she'll be coaching the swimming team. And all the boys join it. But then it turns out she doesn't know anything about swimming. She says, "Oh yeah, I forgot. At my old school, I was on the synchronized swimming team, not the swim team. And I forgot that since this would be an all-boys school, there wouldn't be a synchronized swimming team." She just kind of forgot to mention this. So then the boys, a bunch of the boys who had signed up tried to then not sign up, to quit the synchronized swimming team. But then they get flack from their classmates for not showing commitment. This is a big thing in Japan. You've got to kind of commit to the various things you join. So they go back and they decide to give synchronized swimming a try. But they discover that the pool has been filled with fish because the basketball team is using the pool for fly fishing. So they empty the pool and the fish, but then they get in trouble because they've got to recoup the money now that they've lost when they got rid of the basketball team's fish. So then they've got to do this really successful synchronized swimming performance to get everyone out of trouble and to kind of save their team and get the money back for the basketball team. And it just gets more and more ridiculous. And I think, some people might argue that this zaniness is just part of the comedy, or like the zaniness is the comedy. But I think it just showed that the writers were getting a little bit desperate, or like the writers couldn't come up with an organic way of getting these guys to join the synchronized swim team. I mean, I think in Shall We Dance, which again was a movie I was comparing this to earlier, if memory serves, there was not this big, long, convoluted, zany plot to explain why people were joining the ballroom dancing. It was just something they wanted to do. Here, it just seems like the writers don't know how to get the characters into the synchronized swimming to begin with, and so you just have to go round and round and round this ridiculous plot. All that being said, I do admit that there were parts of this movie that made me laugh. So it's not completely without value. There are some funny scenes. On the whole, though, this movie didn't do a lot for me.